All right, before I get to the topic of this video, I've already made this like 3 times, but I want to just say it. Look, the reason I wear this is to create a level of familiarity and to put myself in the mindset of just being like, okay, look, it's time to do my videos, right? Now, this isn't like a necessity, but it's just nice, it's comfortable, and don't worry, it gets washed, all right? Like, unlike some of y'all gross people out there, bro, that reuse underwear and socks, bro, get out of here. That's like a one-time use, all right? If you didn't know that, I just helped you out. One-time use. Buy enough, cotton underwear and cotton socks to be able to use once a day, bro. That's disgusting. But anyway, to the topic of the video, bro. Look, I remember hearing something back in high school, and it was something about how your friends should always support you. And back then I was like, yeah, friends should always support you. And it sounds so good, doesn't it, right? It's like, yeah, my friends are supporting me, stuff like that. But I think that's total and utter bull-ish. I don't know. I'm trying not to cuss, bro. Like, I just want to set an example. But yeah, anyway, why do I think we shouldn't do that? Well, there's a few reasons. When it comes to supporting friends, I think that's cool. I think what people mean by that is like supporting a cause, but sometimes that gets mistranslated into supporting a friend even when they do something that is not necessarily right, right? Or, and then people say, who's to say what's right, who's to say what's wrong? It's like, well, if we're trying to be better people here, right, we need to hold ourselves accountable to a degree. So if your friend, a blatant example of this would be like just goes up and starts punching someone, right? It's like, well, yeah, that's a dead giveaway. Like, you shouldn't be doing that. But then, there'll be other scenarios that are a lot less like subtle, but you still have to be able to hold your friends accountable, and those are the people that you actually need to hold the most accountable, because if they're in your circle and they're going to be somewhat influenced by you too. You don't necessarily have influence over the outside world or other friend groups, but you do in your circle. So make sure your circle is one, it's one that represents you. So make sure they're actually doing things to make them better, because they're also, again, those are the five people you surround yourself most with are going to be the ones that, kind of dictate the degree to which you grow, right? And so you got to be very, very careful about what you let slide. And sometimes your friends are going to be wrong about things, and I think you should honestly express that, and wrong is like, what do you mean by wrong about things? Well, wrong pertains to whatever you find is not appropriate, right, for your set of values. Again, because your friends are like, your friend group is like a reflection of who you are, kind of thing too. So you got to be careful of that. I don't want to be too general and just say, oh, wrong. It's wrong based off what you value and what your values are. So, don't fall into that BS of supporting them all the time and thinking, if you think something's uncool, bro, just say it. Just say it. There was one other thing I wanted to talk about, but I can't quite remember what it was. It was oh yeah, okay. So I blanked out for like a whole while there. Okay, so the thing is, now there's some scenarios where you would quote unquote support them, right? So I remember, and I know this is gonna come to a lot of yours minds, because if you watch someone like me, you're probably familiar with Andrew Tate, right? And so if you've seen any of Andrew's content, you know that he's talked about the scenario where you're in a club or like a bar or whatever, and say you went to the bathroom and then you come back and you have your friends fighting with other friends, right? Now it's like, in that scenario, do you support them or do you not? The thing is, in specific scenarios like that, you have to be able to think, okay, someone that I find dear is possibly in danger of dying unless I do something, right? So, cause what's the alternative? It's like, you try to talk things out, you try to calm things down, and that might work in certain scenarios, and that's just kind of like something that you have to sense and be able to use your judgment with. But it's like, a lot of the times that won't work out, especially if things are really, really heated, and that tends to be because it gets really, really emotional. Like, that anger gets a hold of us, so you just see both sides fighting. And so what would you do in a scenario like that is like, yeah, you would rather protect your loved one, so in doing so, you're, I guess, supporting them. But ideally, in every scenario, when it comes to your friends, you want to be able to hold them as accountable as possible to things. But for that particular situation, you don't know, right? Hold up, low battery. You don't know, right? So of course you're gonna just start hammering away with your homies, and then trying to find out what happened and what went wrong, and then maybe then hold them accountable to, like, hey, you did this thing wrong. But you can't, like, do that in the moment, because everybody's overtaken by their emotion and they're willing to do anything to kill each other at that point for whatever reason, right? So yeah, in scenarios like that, of course, you, again, quote unquote, like, support them or help them out. But ideally, in every other situation, you need to look to be able to hold your friends accountable. Now, what does that look like? Because people say that shit all the time, right? It's like, okay, what does it mean to actually, what scenario does it look like to hold someone accountable? And I'll tell you right now. So today I was at the gym, and one of my friends, I was talking about meditation with him, and he said that, I know meditation's great, but right now I know I wouldn't be able to do it. Okay. And then he went on to explain, if I'm going to do something, and this was his words, if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it, I'm going to go full throttle. Okay. So that's what he told me. And then I kind of intruded. And let me tell you what I was thinking in this very, very moment. Now, what I was going to do was tell him how he was wrong and how he can do it, and what kind of limiting beliefs I thought he had, because he does value my opinion. Again, remember what I said about criticism. He is someone that I know genuinely already values my opinion, so he'll want my input on it, right? And because he values that, I'm willing to give it to him. I'm not just going to be a dickhead. And even if he didn't, to some degree, because I consider him a friend, I would still give him that input. And I would do it in a manner that is on his side, rather than appearing as if I'm his adversary, rather than thinking that I'm enemies with him. Because if you tell someone something like critical, these days it is very hard to tell someone something critical without them resenting you a little bit. It is very difficult, because I know, if you think anything like me, if you start hearing someone criticize you in some way, not even being hateful. Hate is like, of course you're gonna feel insulted. Of course your brain's gonna be like, who the hell is this guy? But even when you're getting criticized, you might still think, who the hell is this guy to tell me this? Or you might still think, oh, sick, cool, oh, that's crazy. And then in your mind, you're like, I don't care, bro. Why are you telling me this? Go away. Like, what are you doing? Like, I do my own thing, right? So in that moment, I was thinking, look, I know he might have the tendency to think like that. I know he usually doesn't, but it's still possible. And then in that moment, it's very uncomfortable for me. It's gotten way less uncomfortable, but it is still uncomfortable for me to tell him that, because we all have this need to be socially likable. Because why would we not want to tell, we always think, okay, why would we not want to tell someone what's good for them? Especially when we care about them, right? It's like, oh, because you might possibly sacrifice losing some sort of friendship or bond, or you might sacrifice, which is more extreme, but you might sacrifice some sort of uh, like social score almost, or like likability within their eyes, right? And you don't want to do that because we're naturally social creatures and we kind of want to fit in everywhere. So that's very, very hard to do, especially if you're someone like me that always just wanted to, back in high school and things like that, or college, like you tried your hardest to just fit in and for people to fucking like you, bro. But and that is something that's so that always pushes against the magnitude of just being honest and being able to tell your friends like, hey, look, this isn't good, right? So that's what was in my brain at that very moment. I was like, those things were pushing me not to say that. It's like, he might think, I'm a dick for this, or he might like me less, or like things like that. That's like simplifying it, right? But then I was like, wait, do I care? What do I care about more? Do I care about how much he likes me? Or do I care about this person enough to let him know what I think he can improve upon to possibly and potentially help him grow as a person? So that maybe even in the moment, if he does resent or hate me a little bit, he ends up becoming a better human. And therefore, collectively helping everyone around him create like a greater ripple effect. Anything that gives him a greater ripple effect in order to grow. And I was like, wait, this one does. This one gives a greater impact, even if I have to sacrifice a little bit of my likelihood, or for that. In his eyes, I'm willing to do that because I'm willing to be honest and hold people accountable. And so, okay, what does that actually look like? I was like, bro, listen, your first limiting belief is the fact that you think you can't do it. And I told him, before I told him I was going to say these things, you're not going to like what I have to say here, possibly. But because I care for you, I'm going to tell you these things. And then I said, okay, look, your first limiting belief is thinking you can't do it, which beliefs I'll make a whole different video on at some point. That's your first limiting belief, right? You've convinced yourself you can't do it. So of course, believe. Why are you believing in something that isn't helping you? Believe in something that'll help you. Secondly, it's like he told himself he's going to go either full throttle on that thing or not do it at all. And this, ladies and gentlemen, I'm glad he said this, because this, come in close, this is how your mind keeps you complacent. This is how your mind lies to you. And I'll tell you exactly why. You know why? It's telling you to go full throttle and hard. And you might think like, yeah, that's sick. Like my mind's telling me I'll go hard at this thing if I do it. But that's the thing, if you do it. But your mind almost makes that task so difficult within your mind that you almost have no choice, and it makes that choice binary too. So it'll say, oh, do the very hard thing or don't do it at all. You're either going to do the very hard thing or not do it at all. Think of how much of a lie that is. It doesn't like to think in the spectrum. It doesn't like to think you could progressively overload. It'll purposefully lie to you by convincing you and making you feel good that, oh, if you'd go hard on this thing if you did it full throttle. And sometimes I convince myself that when it comes to workouts too. I'd be like, oh, I'm gonna either go full throttle or I'm gonna not do it at all. It's like, no, some exercise is better than none. Don't let your mind lie to you, because then it's like you go throughout the day and your thoughts and your emotions, because of the way we think, start weighing us down, and then we get closer to choosing the binary of no rather than the yes of doing the workout. But why does it have to be like that? Why don't we instead think, oh, it's, some is better than none? It doesn't have to be binary. And stop thinking you have to go full throttle on everything. Like, of course, that's a great mindset to have, but you can only go full throttle if you've progressively overloaded to that point. Think about it, right? I wouldn't tell you, and I know this is a little bit different, but I'm going into depth and detail as to how I told him why I think the way I do, right? Which kind of helps him see my mind frame and kind of allows him to understand that I'm on his side and not against him. So that's why I'm explaining all this, because this is the dialogue I told him. This is the dialogue I had with him. Again, so back to it, right? I was like, okay, think about it, right? That's like saying, saying that you can't meditate for 2 minutes, right? He said, oh, if I'm gonna go full throttle, I'm gonna go like 10 minutes or not do any meditation at all. And I'm like, why can't you just do 2 minutes? And he literally said too, he was like, 2 minutes is like not enough and all that, like it's amazing. But I was like, think about it, right? If you go to the gym, let me give you these two options. Don't go to the gym at all, or go to the gym and lift 400 pounds. What do you think your mind's going to choose? Not the gym. Even for me, some guy who consistently goes to the gym is still gonna like trick himself into picking no, because his mind is doing a forced decision on him, when even though I know that that is BS and I can go to the gym and still lift 100 whatever I bench, right? I don't know, like 150 pounds, or that's really low. I bench more than that. Like I think my max was like 185 last time. But yeah, I could still convince myself like, hey, I can still lift that amount of weight because that is progress at the end. Your mind makes it way too hard for you just so it, you say no. Think about it. Like let me keep going down. Like I could say, oh, if your max is like, I don't know, if your max is like 200, your mind will be like, oh, okay, don't go to the gym or lift 300 pounds. It's like, of course you can't lift 300 pounds, so your choice is like, no. And I know that example is a little off here and there, but it gets the point across. It's like, you don't need to go full throttle on that thing, and you don't need to say no to it. You do something. That's why people make consistent games in the gym, and that's why people win at the game, because they're at least consistent. That's what you need. That's like the basic ingredient you need, and sometimes you're not going to feel like going full throttle, right? And I'd say you build up to that full throttle. Full throttle is more of like an effort thing rather than a numeric thing. Everybody is at where they're at, but that doesn't mean they still all can't give full throttle. Just because I'm lifting 185 pounds does not mean that I'm not going full throttle compared to the guy who's lifting 400. It's an effort thing. So your mind will make these, and I think I talked about this in a previous video, your mind will make up these lies to convince you and make these excuses. But again, back to the original point of the video, right? That's like the encapsulating explanation of what I told them, right? I told them that entire explanation. I was like, look, this is how your mind is lying to you, and this is what it's doing, and this is how you're lying to yourself. And when I had that conversation with him and ended it, he realized, he was like, yeah, he was like, screw you, bro. He started laughing at me. I started laughing too. I was like, yep, I know, because I remember back then I used to listen to all these people, or like people like Hamza telling me, or High School JT telling me, oh, do these things, and I'd be like making up excuses in my mind and shit, and like my mind would find every way to lie itself out of it, like every single way. So you have to defeat the lies of your mind, bro, and that can be very, very hard, because your mind will pick between yes and no questions that are very binary, and it'll do whatever it can to its advantage to deceive you. But again, that's not the point of this video, right? That was just the explanation for how I kept my friend accountable, and why you should too. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. That was like a legitimate example of how you keep someone accountable. So if you heard literally nothing I said, then the takeaway from this video should be, okay, look, talk to them as if there's someone you care about, right? Which is something that Jordan Peterson advocates for. And be on their side. Quite literally, even in mindset, and quite physically too. Like, sit next to them. Don't sit across from them or anything like that. Don't quite literally be in an adversarial position, and don't mentally be in adversarial position. You're not against this person. You're with them, trying to find out what's good and possibly right for them, so that, and you might say, well, why do you want to do that? It's like, okay, so that they can have the kind of impact on life that they would like, and as a result of that, it ripples off, and it actually gives you something too. It gives you more too, because now you have someone that's willing to improve themselves, and you're in a relationship with this person, whether that be friendship, romantic, anything, doesn't matter, right? And you instantly like boost your ability to just become a lot more successful in many domains. So don't underestimate the power of the influence that the people around you have, and if you keep them accountable, you're actually doing something that might be good with them, and you might be doing good for yourself too by just being honest. So, and that's not nothing. So in the long run, it really helps, even though it seems like it's something just very minor. But yeah, that's all I had for y'all. I know that was a bit of a mind, boggle, but again, try not to cuss, can't say mind. But yeah, that's pretty much all I got for y'all. I'm not gonna edit out that pause, bro. I know you struggle through that pause, but I'm just trying to keep it authentic. But yeah, take it easy. Peace.